Hi, I'm Andrew and I'm a pasta enthusiast. In season 2 of Pasta Hotline, we're going to be making a new variety of pastas and new sauces to go along with it. We're going to be a little bit more fancy, but just as wholesome. This pasta is going to make you feel like a god. This season is going to be 3 dishes, just enough to get you through the rest of lockdown. To start off, we're going to be taking the humble spaghetti and we're going to be adding a splash of colour by incorporating spinach into the dough. It's going to make your friends green with envy. We're going to be making a simple sauce to go along with our spaghetti. So check out our Instagram for details and everything that you'll need. Most importantly, tune in at 7 p.m. on Thursday. We'll be making pasta together and be making your nonna proud. Ciao! Ciao ragazzi! Welcome to Pasta Hotline and also welcome to season 2 of Pasta Hotline. In the first season, we didn't really have any high expectations on what we were going to achieve, but we got an overwhelming response of just how much people were enjoying this that we definitely wanted to continue with the season 2. So in this season, what we'll be doing is taking a leaf out of what we've learned from season 1 and getting more creative with some of the techniques that we can do to just keep this process as wholesome. In the first episode, we're going to be making, we're going to be making a spinach spaghetti. And what that is basically incorporating spinach into the dough. So we end up with some green pasta, which is pretty cool. We're also going to be doing a simple sauce called aglio e olio, which is garlic and oil. And with that, we're going to throw some fresh ingredients on the top, some fresh ricotta, and we'll put a few more fresh spinach leaves, bit of chili, bit of pepper. That's all you really need, and we'll end up with a fantastic, delicious dish. If you haven't already boiled some water, whether on the kettle or on the stove, just get that happening now, because one of the first things we're going to be doing is wilting down this spinach to then incorporating into the dough. In terms of the time we'll allow before we can plate up and eat this yum food, allow for about an hour. For the ingredients, as usual, the pasta is going to be plain flour and eggs. I use free-range eggs. I use about 1 egg, or I use 1 egg per person as a gauge, so just keep that in mind. And to make the pasta green, we're going to be using spinach. Other ingredients, I've got fresh ricotta. So if you've bought smooth ricotta in the tub, don't stress too much, but I've only ever really made it with fresh ricotta, and I think that gives the best result. Garlic, obviously, for the sauce, oil, and chili flakes. In terms of equipment, if you haven't got a pasta machine, you could use a rolling pin to flatten the pasta, or a wine bottle if you don't even have one of those. But I have invested in a pasta machine. This is a Mercato, very good investment, speeds up the process a lot. Other things that you'll need, a whisk to break down that spinach with the egg. If you have a blender, even better, it's going to speed up the process even more. And just a sieve to then drain the spinach, get as much of the water out as possible. Or you could put that on some cloths and just scrunch it just to get that moisture out. That's pretty much it in terms of the key equipment. Obviously, like, you need knives and whatnot to chop things. But yeah, let's get a bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing. I like to break it down into 4 key steps. So first, we're going to be making the pasta dough with incorporating the spinach. After that, we're going to roll and cut the pasta, make spaghetti. You could also make something else if you really want to, like fettuccine as an example. We're then going to prep the ingredients for the sauce, so not too difficult. We're really just going to be chopping garlic, and then we're going to cook the pasta and start off boiling it, but we're going to finish it off in the pan. All right, well, let's get started. Nick, if you want to come over with the gimbal, I'm just gonna clear my table, make sure I've got lots of space. All right. So I've boiled some water before. So I've used a big handful of spinach. This will wilt down into something that's almost nothing really, but yeah, a big handful is good for about 3 or 4 people. Just use a little bit more if you're cooking for more people. A bit more water. Won't take long for that to just wilt down just a little bit more. Get the sieve ready. One thing I like to do when cooking is make sure I've got a glass of red. So I've got mine sorted for today, and I have a bottle called Federico, which is a lovely Italian wine, down from a local place called Rascal. Back to the spinach. All right, it really only takes about 30 seconds. I'm just gonna grab a fork. I didn't put too much water, just enough, because the spinach is gonna sink in, and then you'll notice it starts to wilt. If yours is wilted already, if you've already boiled your water, you can just take it out and put it into your sieve. I probably didn't boil mine for long enough. Okay, whilst that's boiling, I'm just gonna get this area clean. So like I said, for the pasta, we're gonna use plain flour and we're gonna use eggs. Pretty exciting for me to be able to do season 2. The first season was really due to lockdown, thinking what can we do that's fun, that's wholesome, that keeps people occupied, and yeah, in doing it, just getting a response from everyone around how much it is meaningful to them. Definitely really wanted to do something in season 2 to keep people interested and occupied during the lockdown stage. I reckon that spinach is done. I'll just wait till Nick comes over with the gimbal. So you can see it's starting to wilt it down. So what we're gonna do is, when that is wilted a little bit more, just drain it as much as possible. And if you've got a blender, what you could do is put that into the blender container with some eggs, and you're gonna blitz that for a little bit. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be putting it in a bowl and just whisking it. One of the cool things about doing that is if you whisk it, it's not so finely cut up, which the end result will be a bit more of this green flecks within the green pasta. Gives it a bit of a marble aesthetic, which is really cool. So this is starting to wilter up. Should have boiled the water a little bit earlier, but no worries. Cooking is not stressful. Might just take a quick sip of vino. Getting the shirt compliments already from Larissa. Thank you for noticing. I did this shopping just for season 2. I didn't really, I just needed to feel a bit more special during lockdown. But yeah, thanks for noticing. Okay, this spinach will also start getting like fluoro green, not fluoro, but it definitely, the green is more vibrant as this goes. If you, like today we're learning how to do it with spinach, but the reality is you can put lots of different things into the pasta dough. You could use a beetroot ground down, or pumpkin. You could put different spices in there as well, herbs and spices like saffron. It all is good for the aesthetic of the pasta and the flavor as well. So with this one, the spinach is going to make the pasta green, which is, I think, aesthetically really cool. And it's a nice way to combine it with the sauce being simple at the end. Okay, finally the spinach is wilting. I'm not going to be premature with this. I'll leave it a little bit longer, but if you did have boiling water, it literally takes 30 seconds to wilt. Mine was just a little bit cool. All right. I will mention as well, if you do have questions or you're having a bit of a pasta disaster as you're cooking along, this is a live stream, so you can comment into the video, make a comment within the video, and yeah, I'll be able to help answer your query. All right, this is definitely wilted enough. Do you want to get a bit of a close-up, Nick? So you've noticed from the leaves, they've come down to a combined spinach. You can also do this with frozen spinach. You just need to thaw it out or defrost it on a pan, and you'll get this very similar result. But this is ready. Okay. So like I mentioned, you want to get as much moisture out as possible. It looks a lot less than it was before, that's for sure. I use the end of a fork and just press it down. And this is a really important step. I'll explain why. So when we're making the pasta, and like I said before, we'll be using about 1 egg per person as a gauge. That's got enough moisture to help with the mixture and combining the mixture. So now that I've boiled this spinach, it's got all this moisture inside of it. And that's excess moisture that will require more flour to get that right consistency. So if you don't want to be changing the ratio of egg to flour, try and get as much moisture out of the spinach as possible. Okay, I think this is pretty good. All right, that's important. All right, gonna be popping that into a bowl. Normally, I would be putting the flour on the table, cracking the eggs in within a well, which is great. We're still going to do that, but because we've got the spinach, I'm going to crack the eggs into the bowl of spinach, and that'll just make that whisking process a little bit more easier. So I'm going to do that now. Who would have thought that season 2 of Pasta Hotline coincides of season 2 of lockdown? All the Victorians must be super duper happy. They got something to do. All right. Now I mentioned before you could use a blender. I've done this before with a blender, and it literally blitzes it in like 3 seconds, and there you go, you've got a spinach mixture with the egg. Since trying the blender method, I've used the whisk method, and find that it's like a little bit imperfect when you're creating this mixture, and when you're rolling the pasta out, into flat strips, you notice that you see little flecks rather than just like solid green pasta. And that adds to the wholesomeness, in my opinion. Now, you don't have to go too crazy where you're like whipping this into a meringue or anything, but you do want to make sure that the spinach is breaking up. The eggs will start to aerate a little bit, but that's okay. Okay, cool. The spinach tends to stick, but what I do is like just pop some of those air bubbles and just see if it's actually breaking up. I can see it definitely is. A little bit more. You could probably, like the less you whisk it, the more rustic it'll look, I guess. But yeah, I can see that like all these little spinach pieces, they're pretty small, so I'm happy with how this is looking. There's a bit of a distribution of spinach within this mix. So I'm gonna proceed with this. Just gotta get the spinach out of the whisk. Guess a little bit left in there is not too bad. Okay, and now to the well. So flour, this is a clean bench. Flour onto the table. A nice little pile. Okay, start to make a well. What's important with the well is you want to have wide walls. That stops the egg running out. So this is pretty good, nice walls. I remember the first time I did this, I made thin walls, egg went everywhere. But yeah, I'm gonna pour this in now. Fantastico. All right. Now, if you've got a fork, this is probably the easiest thing to do to whisk it. And basically just, like you're making an omelette, just quickly whisk it around. Gradually get in some of the flour from the sides of the well. If you get a bit of spillage like that, just cover it up. Now, if you crack the eggs in there to start off with, I find it's actually quite easy to like pop the yolks of the egg and then do this process. I feel like because we've whisked the eggs already, the process feels a little bit more different, but yeah, it's not too bad. Okay. So what you want to be doing here is gradually adding in flour. So you can do that by just making the well a little bit larger and flicking some of the flour in from the sides of the well. You also don't have to go to town on scratching your bench top. You can just do it lightly so you're not scratching your table. When making pasta, actually, if you've got a wooden board, and I'm hoping to get one soon because my nonna uses a wooden board. She pulls it out from the side of the fridge and it's basically her portable workstation for making pasta. It's definitely something I'm aspiring to do. With this wholesomeness of making your own pasta, I think I'm going to add to the wholesomeness of making my own pasta board and go to Bunnings and make something real cool. Cool. Also, if you've added a bit of extra flour, like you're noticing there's too much, don't worry. What we're gonna do is corner that off and we'll probably end up using that flour later. But the consistency we're looking for, it's a little bit different to, well, actually the end result is gonna be the same, but because there's a little bit more moisture in here, it will take a little bit longer to get a pasta dough we're used to, but we're looking to combine enough of this pasta dough around the fork where it gets a bit too hard to mix it. Okay, I think I'm getting there. Now, the finer you get your spinach, the greener your pasta will be. So this is going to be with a tinge of green, with green flecks. But yeah, the finer you make that spinach, the greener your pasta will be. What I'm doing now is the pasta dough is at a reasonably cohesive texture. It's very soft. I'm going to try and pick up as much flour as possible by kneading it and making sure there's no rogue bits. If these rogue bits of pasta don't make it into here early on, it's goodbye for those. They won't be able to be incorporated later. So get them in now or scoop them away afterwards. That's my recommendation. The kneading process is quite simple. Basically, with the flour you have on the table, you want to be distributing the pasta dough so that you're picking up the flour dough with the wet bits. What I tend to do is just push it with this part of my palm and picking up some of that dry flour and then rotating at 90 degrees and repeating that process. If you've made pasta before with me on Pasta Hotline, normally by this stage, the dough is starting to already be quite thick, but just because we've added the spinach, it's a lot softer. The spinach contains a lot of moisture, which is why I stressed earlier to try and get as much of that moisture out as possible. The kneading process is important. If you don't do it enough, the gluten won't build up in the pasta dough, which is important. It gives that nice elasticity, it cooks nicely. Yeah, it's important. So if you feel like there's a little bit too much moisture into the pasta dough when you're kneading it, just keep kneading it, keep adding flour gradually, because we'll definitely want it to be at a stage where the pasta is firmer. Whether you're rolling it out by hand or running it through a pasta machine, that is going to be important. All right. I can definitely feel that this is starting to build up. And I can also see that it's green, the pasta, which is nice. Yeah. So I'm just gonna try and get it a bit more spherical. You can see that it is starting to become more green. You can also see it's still quite wet, the pasta dough. As you definitely don't want to be rolling that out as if that's ready to go. It needs a lot more kneading, a lot more flour. If this is the first time you're making pasta as well, and you're like, hey, I'm doing it with spinach. This process without the spinach normally goes between like 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how much pasta you're making. I feel like when you add spinach, it just adds a little bit more time to the process, again, because of that moisture. But yeah, it's fun. Like, I'm taking a spaghetti and then making it green, or even making a fettuccine where it's a bit wider than a spaghetti. You get to see the pattern within the pasta. It's great. If you really wanted to as well, you could make 2 batches of pasta on the same night, some with spinach, some with beetroot, leave some as egg, you'll end up with green, white, and red pasta, which is just like the Italian flag. Put that in your bowl. All right, this is getting good. This is the wholesome part. The mixture is definitely starting to pick up. That kneading process is getting easier. And yeah, I quite like this one-handed approach. Leaves the other hand available for a drink of red wine or whatever you fancy. I hope you've got one at the moment. It's a Thursday, but it's basically the weekend. You would have seen, or if you're a nonna, they use two hands. My nonna uses two hands like this. Does the same process, but sort of makes like a strip of pasta, like that. It's kind of fun to mix it up a little bit, pretend you're a nonna for a little bit. And then she folds it over and does the same thing. If you do have a wooden board, what you'll notice is the pasta grips onto the board a little bit more. And the legend has it that it keeps the pasta warm rather than the coldness of a marble bench top or granite bench top. I think the major advantage really with a wooden bench is that it just grips the pasta a bit easier and adds to the wholesomeness. All right, could definitely feel the gluten. Not really. It's pretty green, but you might not notice how green it is initially because it's covered in flour, but it definitely is green. Don't you worry. Green with envy. All right, let's have a bit of a check-in on how this is looking. So I'm just gonna tear a little bit. It's definitely drier than before, but if I tear that, it's still a bit moist. You don't want to be rolling moist pasta out. You get clogged in your pasta machine. No good, no bueno. So keep doing this process. It's building the gluten is good. I'm just gonna get some nice fresh flour. If you haven't done your workout today, consider this it. It's pretty good. I really like making pasta so much that I do it several times a week. I feel like it's a great way to unwind. This process of taking a pretty repetitive task, it's not mindless. You're still thinking about what you're doing, but you don't have to concentrate too hard. Is a really nice way to just unwind after a big day or a big week, or make a nice dinner and enough for lunches tomorrow. It's so much better for you to make pasta from scratch that once you've started, you kind of get hooked. It's for what you put in, you get more out. That's for sure. And it's a great activity to do with friends as well. So you can have, well, within your household under these circumstances, being locked down, having a household dinner, doing it together, brings you together. Can't complain really. All right, bit of an update on my dough texture. It's getting harder, the dough. If I poke it, kind of slowly rises back up. It's getting there. If I put I'll just wait till it comes with the gimbal. If I tear it a little bit, again, it's getting drier, which is nice. We probably would be done by now if we were just using, if we didn't add anything to the pasta dough, but it's really important that we make sure the dough is properly covered in flour, not caked in flour on the top where it ends up flaky, but just like it's incorporated into the dough. And the kneading process is essential to building the gluten in the dough. Every time I say building the gluten, I feel like super scientific, but I don't know. I heard that's what it does, and that's all it does. So this is getting quite tough now to knead, which is a great sign and a great cue for another sip of vino. So I'll get in a second. Things that can really go wrong with this process, which is not too much, is that you've added either too much flour, in which the resolution is try and scoop some away, or there's just too much moisture from the spinach, in which case you should just add a little bit more flour. And you can mix it up by, like if you get this down pat today, and you're like, hey, I just made spinach spaghetti. You could be making this, but then make a ravioli, or you could be putting in something different into the pasta mix, like pumpkin. I haven't made pumpkin yet before, but I reckon that'd be really, really nice. So I'm gonna do that probably next. Okay, I think this is enough kneading on the dough. What I'm gonna do is just try and make it spherical, and I'll get a bit of a close up of what it looks like. So it's green, the flour's nicely coated, it's kind of got a bit of a matte look. If I poke it, that starts to rise a little bit. So if I make it a little bit more like a ball as well, I'll cut it and show you what the inside looks like. Look at that. That looks really cool. Can't wait to turn that into pasta. Spaghetti. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is prepare the second step of making this into spaghetti by rolling it out and then cutting it. And I'm just going to clean my bench top by just, pardon me, grabbing a spatula and using the end to get that dry pasta off the table. Life hack. So, since starting Pasta Hotline, not only have people been sending in pictures of what they're doing, which I highly recommend you do. Please take pictures and add us on Instagram, Pasta Hotline. But yeah, people have been sort of sharing like how they're watching this. Some people are even just chucking it on the TV and just watching it as a pastime. You can watch all the other episodes on our YouTube account, which you can see all the different things we've made. All right, moving along. So I've cleaned my table, got this awesome pasta. What I'm gonna do is just make a quick note that you can, if you don't have a pasta machine, this is the point where you want to be rolling the pasta out. So I've cut mine in half, and if you're going to be rolling this out by hand, that's a good way to just start the process of using this and trying to make a really long strip. So I'm going to show you both methods, but just to give you an idea, it's a lot easier to work with a bigger piece of pasta dough because you'll end up with a longer strip. If you're doing that, as you're rolling it out in one direction, flip it around, do that again, and like just apply the pressure into the middle of the pasta, and you'll start to see it starts to take shape. You can also move it out and widen it. But yeah, your objective really is to just make a pasta strip. So I'll leave that for now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making it with my little pasta machine. If you are using one of these for the first time, a couple things to note. Pasta machine, the dial should be on the inside of the table, and you know, fingers crossed that you've got a table with a lip. If you don't, you'll need to get a bit creative. Maybe get a board, or even attach it to, like if you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. You could even attach it to the ironing board if you had to as an emergency. But yeah, I've got a table that has a lip, which is nice. Doesn't have to be too tight, but tight enough. That's not going anywhere. Little spinny device. Cool. All right, so I'm going to proceed by doing this, but shoving this piece of pasta through there, it's not going to work. I'm going to cut this down into yet another half, end up with smaller pieces. So with this, just flatten them out as discs, and you'll end up with something that's more manageable to feed through the pasta machine. Now, if you are one of the people that don't have a pasta machine and you're wondering, well, as I'm rolling this out, what do I do? Just keep rolling it out until you get to a point where you could cut them, cut little strips. Find an easy way to do it, and I'll show you later. You've got plenty of time to roll it. Would be to like roll it up and then cut them. But yeah, if you wanted to try something new as well, I'll just show you really quickly. So I've taken a little bit of pasta. You could roll this and basically make a what's called pici, which it's basically like a spaghetti because it's round, but it'll take you a lot longer to do, and it's a bit more rustic. I'll just show you as best I can right now. It'll end up as like pretty much a rustic looking spaghetti. Anyway, takes a lot longer, but you could make your spaghetti like that. It's called pici. I'm going to proceed with using the machine. Now, a few things to note. I've got my machine on a 0, and for those that's the first time that they're doing it, you might have different numbers. Essentially, you want the two cylinders within the pasta machine to be as wide apart as possible so that it's easier to put the pasta through. And then as we're winding it through, we're going to be compressing that so that the pasta is becoming flatter and flatter. For a nice spaghetti, I'm only going to go up just a couple of steps to make a thick spaghetti. I think it works nice for this sauce. So you can see just after one wind, it's already the same amount of effort, which still yet to go on the manual one. But yeah, what I tend to do is just put it through a couple of times on the first dial, and you can already start to see that marble texture. Looks really cool. I will mention that the more you flatten the pasta, the more solid the green will look. So if you're wanting to sort of keep this aesthetic, flattening it as minimal as possible is probably best. What I'm going to do is fold that in half, and that gives me a straight edge. With that straight edge, I'm going to be putting the pasta in 90 degrees, and you'll see that now I have a straight edge in the pasta. Still got a round edge here. We can make yet another straight edge by just folding that over. 1, 2. You'll notice that the width that I'm looking for is probably about 1 centimeter and a bit smaller than the width of my pasta machine, because that means that folding process is sped up a little bit. It can be pretty tricky trying to get the folding process right, and your pasta is either too thin or too wide for the machine. So I'm doing this one with ease, and you can see it's got a nice width, 3 straight edges, and this should be the last straight edge. Always press down the edges just a little bit. Doesn't matter if your pasta is starting to taper. At the end of the day, it's going to be spaghetti anyway, but I'm really happy with this. So I've got a nice straight edge, straight edge, straight edge, fairly straight edge, not the end of the world. What I will do is have some plain flour at hand, because what I definitely like to do is keep the pasta floured, pretty much. Quick check with where everyone's at. If you're falling behind or you need me to speed up, just shout out. I'm going to grab a sip of wine. Cool. So the good news with this is, for the spaghetti that I'm going to be making, we don't have to go through the machine too much. And because I'm using the green spinach in the pasta, I want to try and keep those flecks as much as possible. I've just changed the dial to increase by 1 on my pasta machine. By increasing it by 1, these cylinders are getting thinner, and I'm probably going to go 1 more after this. Feel free to make a thinner spaghetti or fettuccine. You can cut it by hand, or you could use an attachment, which is what I'm going to be doing. The key takeaway for today really is just learning how to incorporate something different into the pasta dough. I'm just going to show you now what this is looking like. So definitely got that marble effect. The flecks are starting to sort of blend into the pasta just a little bit more, but that's okay. It's still got that green tinge and it's looking lovely. I'm going to go up another dial. What I tend to do is just run it through a couple times just to make sure it's nice and flat. Maybe a few, and then we go. So because I'm making thick spaghetti, I don't really want to compress this anymore. So it's going to look like a pretty short strip, but if you think about it, that's roughly the length you'd get out of a packet pasta anyway. So that's a good gauge for what I'm working with today. You could certainly go thinner if you wanted. You'll get more quantity as well, but I'm quality over quantity. So that one can just sit aside, and I'll do that the next piece as well. So I'll speed this one up just a little bit. So feed the disc through, just use your fingers to guide it. Voila, it's looking good already. So I do it about 2 times and then start to get these straight edges. I was thinking the other day, I know different pastas, a handful really, but what can I do to make something extra interesting? And when I learned how to incorporate different ingredients into the pasta to make it a different color and give it a slightly different flavor, I thought, wow, this has layers to what I'm doing. What else has layers? And then I thought, lasagna. Lasagna has layers. There's lots of layers. So I'm thinking, and I haven't tried this, but if anyone wants to beat me to it, do it and take a photo and show me. But I'm really looking forward to, I'm gonna just keep this like this, make a lasagna with multicolored strips, different flavors. Cool, a little bit of flour for me. Ooh, almost threw that off the table. Cool. Yeah, you can't really put too much flour, I think. Flour's your friend. A lot of people let the pasta sit and rest. By all means, you can do that. So when we made the ball of pasta after we kneaded it, people tend to wrap that in cling wrap or put a bowl over it and leave it on the table for maybe 10 minutes. Some people say half an hour, some people even longer. I've tried that before. I've also just, kept it fresh and then thrown it in the pot. I think it cooks a bit faster when it's more fresh. I feel like it's a bit lighter the fresher it is. There's no right or wrong. Just go with what you like. This way is also much quicker. But yeah, feel free to let it rest if you really wanted to. Okay, so I've got 2 strips here. This one turned out just a little bit longer than the last one. Don't know why, maybe I just cut them different sizes, but they're looking pretty fantastic. So for what I'm going to show you in the time we have, I'm just going to do these 2. But if you're doing this by hand, and I'm going to make this later, don't worry, feel free to keep rolling pasta out and watch along because the sauce is actually pretty easy. I'll show you how that works now. So before we do the sauce, I will mention, get some more water boiling because we're gonna, once we cut the garlic, which doesn't take too long, we're then going to want to cook the pasta. So I'm gonna do that now. So I've got some water on the boil. Maybe I need to put more. It's okay. All right. Actually, I lie. I skipped a step. With the pasta that we've got, I'm going to use a spaghetti attachment to make the spaghetti. How can I forget to actually cut the spaghetti? So if you've got one of these, the way that they work is there's these little lips on the edge of it. There's these little lips on the edge of the pasta attachment. They help connect with the ones on the machine. And that is there for your spaghetti. Move this thing to be able to rotate those. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed these sheets of pasta through here. Before we do the first one, if you have a tea towel cloth or something you can put the pasta on to keep it dry and out of the way, easy to transport, just get that ready. But this is the fun bit. Yep, it's green pasta. What I do is I don't wind it all the way to the end. I grab it just before the end. And yeah, lay it down. Looks good. If you're making a lot of pasta and you have a limited amount of space, what you'll want to do is just make sure that where you can, there's not too much of the pasta overlapping itself. This is a little bit more of a dense pasta because of the spinach, and it will stick a little bit easier. So just trying to spread it out. Otherwise, just put a bit more flour on the pasta sheet, and that'll help prevent it from sticking if you need to overlay the pasta on top of each other. It's pretty cool. I love this bit. It's also a good idea to just put your hand across so you keep it flat rather than curl them all together. There you go. I like to make these a little bit longer than we'd get out of a packet. And yeah, if you wanted to leave that in the pantry, if you don't want to cook it straight away, you can. Just put it on like a chopping board, put it in the pantry, keep it covered with another tea towel, should be fine. But yeah, that's the pasta. I'm gonna put this to the side while I am gonna cut the garlic. So un momento. All right. So where did I put my garlic is the question. Here it is, hiding behind the eggs. So because this sauce is really just garlic and oil as the main ingredients, the body, I use 4 or 5 pieces of garlic, maybe 4 is enough. And yeah, it's gonna be great. So I cut the edges off the garlic, and if the, I don't know, everyone has their own technique. What I do recommend is cutting them though, not picking at them. So that'll take you forever. So I'll just show you my little process. It's nothing revolutionary. Just cut the edges off. Makes it a bit easier to slice a little bit to peel off the edge. And yeah. I've heard you can also just chuck them in the microwave for like 10 seconds and then the garlic skin falls off. But I don't personally like doing that. I feel like it's cooking the garlic prematurely. But whatever floats your boat. Well, I always be careful with a sharp knife. It's really amazing to say that you can make a sauce out of oil and garlic. Fantastic. It's so simple. I'm a big fan of simple things, and I have some ideas for other simple sauces. So if you are liking this and you want to diversify what you're making, yeah, shout out with ideas and recommendations. Be happy to do that for a future episode. Okay, I've got my cloves of garlic. My water's boiled, just a reminder again, if you haven't boiled water, that step's coming up. I crush the garlic with the side of a knife. Makes it a lot easier to chop as well. Yeah. Okay, and the chopping process. Just make sure your fingers are out of the way. That's really important. Don't want anyone to get hurt. Wouldn't be very wholesome. And remember, cooking is not supposed to be stressful. Take your time. If you feel like having a break, having a sip of wine, just go for it. The major benefit of, I mean, I'm not talking about benefit here of like watching me chop garlic, but But if you haven't made pasta before, if you've just been doing it recently, you'll realize that the real joy is just sort of getting over that initial barrier, that initial hurdle of how to do it. And it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. You just need a bit of guidance at the start. For me, I watched my nonna and watched how she makes pasta. So I lived with her for a couple of years. And it was a great experience, you know, getting to learn how to do some simple things. Learned that fresh ingredients make a big difference. She has her garden. And yeah, you can perfect the process, that's for sure. But the biggest lesson I learned is just how good homemade pasta is compared to regular bought pasta. So I'm chopping the garlic fairly fine, not minuscule to the point it's disintegrating. But like once I plate this up, it's going to be visible. So I'm going to leave it at that. What I'm going to do now is get that hot water on the pot for the pasta, because this next step, if you want to bring the gimbal around, Nick. This next step is going to be cooking the pasta, oil and garlic in the pan, and then we're going to, once the pasta is cooked, throw it in the pan and then plate it up. It's going to be super easy. So I've got that water boiling there. Dare I say I need a little bit more. So I'll put the water in there, just getting this there as quickly as possible, just a little bit more water. But what you will want to do is salt this water. So I like to say salt it like the ocean, and over exaggerate because you want lots of salt. If you imagine like a tablespoon filled with salt, that's probably how much you want to get. Okay. Now for the sauce, what we're going to do is a bit of oil in the pan. So I'm using just everyday olive oil. Essentially, if you use extra virgin or virgin olive oil, that's got a lower boiling temperature. And I mean, it's not the end of the world, you could use it, but for something like this will withstand a stronger heat, which we'll want to do later when we turn the heat up. So I've put that on there. It's on a low heat, don't want it to get sizzling. I'm just going to get the garlic ready to put on there. And I'm going to top this up with just a little bit more water. Didn't realize I had so little in the kettle. But yeah, a bit more water, pasta, oil, garlic. That's the step you need to get to at this point. All right. Sippy time. Now, if you're prepared a different sauce for today, that's also fine. I just wanted to be able to show you with the dish we're making today, what you can do with the spinach, make us like a simple sauce with some fresh ingredients on top. So yeah, it's gonna be super interesting. So I'm just gonna get ready now with this water. Awesome. Cool. And now the pasta that we made earlier. This is going to go into the pot. So this won't take long to cook, which is awesome. Let's have a bit of a look at it. It's very nice. Cool, it's going in the pot. I always throw the pasta into boiling water and not put the water in and then let it boil with the pasta in there. Just gonna grab the other batch. You'll notice that as soon as you throw the pasta in, it's going to stop it from boiling because it's a lot cooler of a temperature. Yeah. So I've got a question from Yui. Are we using the spinach and ricotta in the sauce? We will be, but to start off with, we're doing the oil and the garlic. So I'm just gonna chuck that on now. And that's just gonna cook slowly. And to give you an idea of these next steps, when this pasta is ready, we're going to put it into the pan where the oil and the garlic's been going. Mix that around just a little bit. It's gonna smell really nice. And we're gonna take this out just al dente, which is like firm, so that it can cook a little bit more in the pan. And the fresh ricotta and the pepper and the chili and the spinach, fresh spinach, will go on the plate afterwards. It's really nice when you mix it around that way. So yeah, I'm gonna grab some tongs. Did you want this like fan? Yeah. Okay, cool. Pasta really doesn't take that long to cook. I'll turn it down. You'll notice as it's cooking, it becomes a lighter green, which is pretty cool. When we take this pasta out, we're going to be saving some of this pasta water. And this pasta water is going to be used as part of the sauce. And that will help emulsify the sauce to be a little bit thicker. So you can see my garlic is starting to cook. I'm going to turn that down a little bit so it doesn't burn. Keep the camera focused on there, Nick. I'm just going to turn off my pasta because that's cooked. I always recommend doing a bit of a taste test, so grab a little bit and have a taste. What we're looking for is the texture. Al dente. So it's firm, it's cooked. But it's not too soggy. So an easy way to transfer it is if you've got tongs. Actually, I'll do it a more conventional way. This is going to be easier. So as that's cooking, I'm going to get my sieve and get ready to pour the pasta out into the sieve. But I'm not going to want to pour all of it out at once. What I'm going to want to do is keep some of the pasta water, which is going to be really important. So all the pasta's out, but I've still got pasta water in here. I'll leave the pasta water here. Okay. With this, throwing it on the pan. I've put it on a low heat and I got to my garlic just before it was burning. You'll want enough oil in there to be able to generously coat the pasta that you've got in the pan. And you'll want to be able to mix it around so that that garlic is is getting mixed up within the pasta. It smells delicious right now. It smells so yummy. Just gonna turn the heat up. So almost done with it. Oh, looks so good. Could get a little fancy. Oh, yum. Just I think oil and garlic smells is good. So I mentioned to getting some of the pasta water in there. So what I'm gonna do is pour a little bit in. I've got a pan that's piping hot, so I've got to use this. Not too much, not too much. The amount that you want to use, it's sort of created just like enough to cover the surface area of the pan. All your pasta doesn't have to be like distributed. We really just want this to reduce a little bit with the oil and the garlic that were in the pan. So when that'll basically thicken. And you can see there's like, it's probably hard to see on the camera, but there's like little oily swirls within the pasta water that's there. And the reason why we use the pasta water is because that's got the starch from the pasta in the sauce. Yeah, so this will probably take like I'm gonna turn up the heat to its maximum. When that reduces, that's gonna be ready to plate up. So what I'm gonna do is just get those final simple ingredients ready, which for this is gonna be fresh spinach. So I'm just gonna grab that. I think I put it in the fridge. Fresh spinach and fresh ricotta. And what I'm gonna be doing is when I plate this up, this is a ricotta cheese, just gonna break it up over the pasta dish. Just put a little bit of spinach leaves. It's gonna be so yum. All right, I'm gonna have a look at how the pasta's going. Cool. It's getting there. If you've got like cherry tomatoes or if you had rocket, you could put that in and that's pretty cool with shaves of parmesan. Get creative. I think really learning how to incorporate something different into the pasta dough opens up a new world of opportunities with different things that you can make. So this is definitely starting to emulsify. You can have a look here. Then I'll try and move the pasta on this side. And you can see that's a thicker, much thicker. It's basically a garlicky, oily sauce. It's really yummy. And because I had the pasta al dente, which is a little bit firm, this is still cooking. It's not going to be too soft by the time this part of the dish is done. But yeah, I think this is just about done. It does smell amazing, I have to say. Okay, I'm going to plate this up and then put the garnish on it. So Nick, just follow me. All right. I'll just get new tongs. Okay. Looks pretty nice, smells pretty nice. Okay, I like to get some of that extra garlic out of the pan. Try and put that on top as well. Okay, so that's one plate. What I do next is get some spinach leaves, put as much as you see fit. I like to just put some around the edges. Then get some of this fresh ricotta. I use about 100 grams per person. I usually just plonk it on the top, break it up just a little bit. And when I tuck into this to eat it, I usually mix it all around. It's delicious. Makes it a bit more creamy looking as well. Okay, bit of chili flakes on top. And can't go wrong with salt and pepper. So I don't really put too much salt because there's enough from when we salted the water, but pepper's good. And that's it. Like if you put enough oil into the pasta mix, the pasta that you've cooked is definitely going to be well coated with the flavors, and that's what's really important. And when you tuck into this with a fork and you mix it around, which I'm going to show you. It starts to melt that ricotta just a little bit and makes it such a delicious dish. It's very light, it's great for summer. Summer's coming up. And yeah, it's healthy, it's good for you. But I wanted to, now that I've helped you make some spinach pasta, I want you to be able to get creative and try something by incorporating something different. If you want to put pumpkin in or something like that. But yeah, wanted to say thanks for tuning in for episode 1. Thanks for everyone that's been following along and coming along this journey. I hope you've really enjoyed being able to do something during lockdown and keep you occupied. Stay creative with what you're making, stay wholesome, and yeah, make sure you're taking lots of pictures around what you've done today. So I'd love to see what you've created, and yeah, ciao.